So this is Laura here with Brent and Manuel. It is February 27th at about 1:45. All right, so jumping right in, I'm going to ask you guys some questions about your relationship, co-teaching, co-planning, all that good stuff.
Okay.
So starting from the very beginning, how did you guys first meet each other?
I know that there were I don't want to say issues, but there was a problem with one of his previous placements, and they kind of needed somebody in an emergency because there were, just time and all of that stuff. So we kind of met each other, I'd say rather quickly. And I know that he was, that there were, as I said, previous issues at one of the placements, so I'm not sure if he necessarily kind of came into this one maybe kind of preemptively thinking that maybe there were going to be more issues, but luckily and thankfully it's worked out really, really well. He's been great. I've been really lucky. I did this, not this program, but I did host another student teacher from Columbia last year, and that worked out quite well. So I kind of had my fingers crossed that it was going to work out well again, and it has. So, I mean, when did we? It was mid-October, I think. Yeah. Mid-October when we were already about 4, maybe even almost 6 weeks, kind of behind the ball when we met each other. So we kind of had to get acclimated very, very quickly. But
so what did that look like in the beginning, getting acclimated? Did you guys set up times to talk? Did you jump in with the? It
was kind of a lot of jumping in straight away. Like, I think he was really, really ready. Yeah. I think that he had kind of already reached the point where he was kind of over the nonsense and he knew what he needed to do. And I think he was really willing to be able to show, what he was capable of doing. And I think he really just wanted that opportunity. So it did not take, within days, we were already clicking. So it did not really take long at all.
Yeah, because I didn't want to slow myself down. I had to leave the other residency because of a medical reason. And so I'm really happy because this is working out very well.
Cool.
We work together, we meet often, we discuss things, we're able to reflect on how lessons went, and so we have good communication and constant.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And what does that communication look like for you guys? Do you have time set aside where you plan?
We do. It's usually right now.
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't mean to be a jerk.
It's Brent's prep period.
Yeah.
And this is when we try to meet
But we also do a lot of communicating kind of in real time in the classroom, which is really nice as well.
Yeah.
So on the lessons where he kind of takes the helm, I will just kind of, like a lot of nonverbal cues and things like that. But also I'll kind of come up to him and I'll just be like, okay, maybe we should try this and let's try this and slow this down and speed this up and just kind of like real time direct. But it's great because we do have another teacher in the room. So I'm able to kind of devote my time to him as well as devoting time to the students as well. So it's kind of something that nicely enough is, it can happen if need be. And it's usually just very just kind of like little helpful hints. It's never any sort of criticism in front of, it's just like, okay, and we've been really working on our nonverbal cues and just, he kind of knows what I'm saying without saying anything now, which is great. So, cool. Yeah.
Mind reading, excellent. Useful skill for a teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
So thinking specifically about co-planning, so when I'm not here interrupting your prep periods, what is it?
I was just kidding.
He was very excited about the Pellegrino water.
Yeah, I was.
That's why
thank you. I love the cute little bottle. It's fantastic. Thank you.
I know how precious this time is. That's why I come bearing drinks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Poland Spring.
Right?
No.
Right.
Pellegrino.
Yeah. Peasant water.
What was your question?
The question was, when I'm not here, what is your co-planning process?
So usually what we'll do is, like Manuel said, we'll do some reflection on what happened during the course of the lesson, things that worked, things that didn't work, sometimes things that we maybe attempted to try that just, in the course of things, just, maybe didn't get implemented the way that we wanted them to. to just kind of make a conscious effort to make sure that those things do happen the next day. And then we also kind of plan, for the following day. And sometimes in cases, usually at the beginning of the week, we usually try to plan, because I only have him Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday because he's at the elementary school the other 2 days. So usually on Mondays, we try to at least, gauge a plan for the following 2 days. So then at least we know kind of where we're going to be. And we don't always end up there. Sometimes we do, and everything works out just such. But for the most part, at least there's a guide, that we attempt to follow that kind of gets us through those first 3 days. And we're normally in contact with each other on Sundays beforehand as well, just because that kind of sets the mood for the, for the upcoming week. And just kind of like little helpful reminders and oh, remember this, and oh, don't forget about this, and we're going to try this, and things like that. So,
and all the lessons are on an Excel sheet that Waligar has put up, so I can work on them. I have access to the drive, so I can work on them at home, and he does too. And so we're always constantly updating the lessons.
Yep. And he'll make adjustments as he sees necessary, and he'll make comments. And I know that there's other responsibilities that he has as far as Columbia is concerned. But like I said, it gave him access to the drive, so he always knows what's going on, and he can work remotely as well. Helpful. So, because there are times where we intend to meet for a half an hour and we only get 10 minutes. Yes. And there's times where we intend to meet for 10 minutes and we're here for an hour. And those days are fine too. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
What about with co-teaching? What are some priorities that you guys have decided to work on aside from the mind reading?
For me, it's kind of, and the thing is, and I'm not necessarily this way, but for me, it's, and I hate using this word, it's not about relinquishing the control, but I guess it's maybe more about giving him opportunities to kind of stumble through things. And I guess maybe I'm kind of reliving those experiences myself, and I know how uncomfortable they can be. And it's really hard for me to let him stumble. And I know that that's something that he absolutely needs to do. And it's not because I know it has nothing to do with his abilities, as it's not that at all. It's just when I see potentially maybe the class going in a direction that I don't necessarily maybe want it to go, I think that's when I kind of tend to pull back a little bit. And Jim and I have had this conversation, and this is something that I have been attempting to work on, is just letting things happen the way that they happen. I'm there just in case. And that's kind of the role that I need to be in when I'm letting him teach. And I can't, again, it's, and I think that's kind of like the ESL nature of me as well, that I'm always kind of, just like, that's just kind of who I am as a person. It's not about me, necessarily having to dictate everything that goes on in the class, but it's just, I guess I have such a clear idea of the way that I want things to go, like the outcome of the class. And I just have to just let that go. And I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Yeah.
It's tough though, and it's tough because it is uncomfortable, the stumbling, but
right. But it's absolutely, it is necessary. Yeah. And I know that I did it, and I guess, like I said, maybe it's just difficult for me to kind of see somebody else kind of go through that thing, but without doing that, you don't learn. So, and he's just a nice person.
Because you grow. So. Yeah. Wally's also very warm, and he cares a lot about the students, the relationship with them, the affective domain is important to him with his students. And so probably then that reflects on me. He doesn't want me to have a bad time, I suppose.
Right.
But we know, that growth happens through experience and through trial and retrial. So yeah, we work on that. But the important thing is, I think that we have a good dynamic, and that helps.
Yes.
Because we have trust in each other, and that really helps. We just don't sugarcoat things, and we talk very directly, and that's very important. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so now I'm just going through. This is not even the right interview protocol. I think I've done this before.
That's okay.
So I'm going through the 4 pillars of TRTC. Co-teaching, co-planning was the first one. And the next one is curriculum.
Okay.
So what are some ways that you two develop curriculum together?
How do we develop curriculum together? Well, we try to... So the formal curriculum in a way has been set from before,
Right.
which are in the ELA class, which are the certain books that we have to cover. But what we do is that in those parts that we can change, like for example, there's a starter where there's a quote that they have to discuss, where they do journaling, where they do reflections. So we try to get quotes in there that are relevant to the students and also current events or things that might be happening around. So that's one way in which we kind of affect the curriculum.
And also kind of in some of the differentiation strategies that we use too. We have templates and scaffolds that are kind of in place that we've used that we know that work pretty well. We do also use some video. We do use, in some cases, depending on the readings, we do use the audio CD to back up so the students get the model of the reading and, they just kind of follow along. And then we'll do intermittent pauses where, we'll check for comprehension and maybe ask, some sort of discussion question, maybe that's, as he said, that's kind of based on the do now, that's based on the journal to kind of bring everything back. So I guess in a sense, it's kind of that constant reinforcement of the thing. Cause like, as Manuel said, we decided before he came what books we were going to do for the year. So it's more about the approach and like the access points that we offer. And I think that that's where he comes in. And it's just also good to have, another set of eyes and ears because he sees things and hears things that I don't necessarily hear, or my co-teacher for that matter. And it's good. And he also comes in with his own perspective as well. Yeah. So, and that's really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So.
Also, the hidden curriculum includes classroom culture.
Correct.
Wally Gori speaks Spanish, and so do I. And most of the kids are Spanish speakers. So that also, we try to make them feel very welcome in their own skin. And so, Wally Gori would throw phrases in Spanish, and so would I. And then it makes them just more comfortable, and then more willing to engage and participate.
Right.
So that's another aspect that's
and I know that he also does some after-school work as well. He does some tutoring after school, which is great.
Bilingual.
And I do as well. I mean, we don't necessarily do it together, but it's just something that he is kind of, even as a student teacher, he was like, I think that this would be helpful. This would be even better. And as he said, because he has that native language support that he can offer, that's really, really great. And that's a wonderful skill, that I think is underutilized here at this school. So.
Cool. Some exciting background music for the next question.
Yeah.
So the third pillar, very dramatic, is actually technology, assistive technology and instructional technology.
Great.
How do you use assistive technology and instructional technology in your classroom?
Yeah, so we use, at a personal level, I work a lot with the...
He's never without that thing. Like it is, if he had one of those hip holster things that was big enough, he would use it, but he's never without it.
And then this, we're referring to the iPad. And so here I have all of my notebooks and my notes. And as well, there's the readings that we have. So in the readings, I'm able to, let me see if I can show you. I'm able to annotate while I'm teaching. What we have spoken about, Wally Gori and I have spoken about the previous day of the themes, the topics, or the, readings that need to be, for example, Outliers was a book that we did, so I just start the important topics and I highlight and I put marginal notes and...
Yep. And he'll do the guided reading questions and discussion questions. Right. They're built in. So he'll actually follow along on the digital text and he'll make notes in real time, during class, but then he also has things that are pre-prepared where he'll jump in and just be like, oh, what about this? Or, if you look on page 42, you'll see this quote. What does this quote mean to you? Yeah. Or how does this quote relate to the central idea that we discussed in the journal? So it's great. It's just a really, really valuable tool. As Manuel said, we also have the Google Doc that we use for the lesson planning, which he has access to, which he can also go in and he has permission to make changes and all those other things. So there's that. We have smart boards in every classroom. We have desktops in every classroom. We have a dedicated laptop cart for every floor.
Oh, yeah.
Which are not always the easiest things to do, but if you do it well enough in advance, then you can usually get the laptops. And I know that for the upcoming assessment for the students that have passed the Common Core, they're actually going to get to use computers to type their essays, and the other students that still need to pass will handwrite because that's what's required on the Common Core.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and you might be purchasing an iPad as well.
I actually ordered one through wonderful Columbia University, who was going to give me my own iPad. Thank you very much, Columbia. I'm very excited. It's been ordered. I'm just waiting for Caitlin to tell me to come and pick it up.
Awesome.
And then I'm going to tell him how the app works, which is the notebook app.
Yeah,
Because basically
it's
you
really
can have...
He's got just dedicated digital
all
notebooks.
the notebooks are here.
It's insane.
And every notebook, Vivian, IS, so every notebook just allows you to...
Yeah, it's great.
Incorporate, a little bit of things here, but yeah, so notebooks also allow you to incorporate images, and it's the residency one, photographs. For example, this is Cha, right? So things I jot in there are meetings with Walagori, like this is an example of the meetings that we have, the agenda we cover, the points, I take photographs of what goes on whenever I see a good idea, write it down, write on it. So it's just, it helps a lot.
Very cool.
Observation.
Yeah, it's really, really neat.
And so I'll show Walagori how this $7 app, which is amazing, digital notebooks app works.
Notebooks.
Yeah, called Good Notes is called.
Good Notes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you ever show your students the annotations you've made? I feel like those would be really interesting for kids to see.
They love to see me like do stuff on the iPad, and in the elementary school I actually work with it directly there. So in the elementary school they actually work on the iPad. Let's see if I have the latest. See, like, so they do,
really
so they actually work directly on it, and then I can pass it on to my mentor teacher there. If I do an observation, I can do it graphically. So it's really, really helpful, and it's helped me organize myself a lot.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep.
All right. So the fourth pillar is STEM. We've talked a little bit about technology, but science, engineering, and mathematics. How do you incorporate, STEM in your classroom?
Oh yeah, like for example, outliers. That was an amazing way of incorporating numeracy, an embedded type of numeracy, because outliers is a book by Malcolm Gladwell, and it's about how
why successful people are successful.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of numeracy in there and a lot of statistics, and it was a great way to incorporate it. Numeracy this way, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, and the fact that it's nonfiction too, because I know that that's one of the shifts in the Common Core, that they're shifting towards more nonfiction heavy things. And I don't know how familiar you are, but the only essay that they're required to write is an argumentative essay based on nonfiction, where they read 4 texts and then, determine which texts are for and which texts are against. And now the literary aspect has only become a 2-paragraph written response.
Oh, wow.
So the shift is, again, so we try to incorporate 2 instances of nonfiction. I'm not sure if they're going to do Moneyball, because the thing that kind of sucks about my schedule is that the last month and a half to 2 months is pretty much all dedicated to the NYSESLAT. So I'm not in the classroom very much, which is going to require him to do a heck of a lot more, which is fine. But so that's kind of what we're gearing up for now. And then that way, it would kind of be like I would literally have zero control because I'm not going to be in the classroom, which is fine.
But I know the co-teacher.
Yeah, of course. And he gets along really well with co-teachers. I don't necessarily think that's a really interesting question, because I know that they did Moneyball last year for the first time, and some of the kids, even the kids that were big fans of baseball, it was just I mean, it's all statistics. It's all like really. It's
applied
and I think the story itself is beautiful. Like the fact that they figured this thing out, and then they basically created a baseball team based purely on statistics, and that proves that statistics work. I mean, that's the beauty of it. But when you're in 10th grade, you'd rather read something that's maybe not quite so stat heavy.
Yeah.
And it just gets very cumbersome. It gets very... And Outliers, I think, is a nice balance of both. Like, it's literary enough where the stories are there, and I think Gladwell is a great storyteller. And then he also kind of, backs up the stories with statistics, with facts, with these things where Moneyball is just kind of like, bop, 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 and that's really all that it is. And I think the story kind of gets lost. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying we don't make attempts, but as far as STEM, because we do have physics, we do have chemistry, we do have living environment, we do have algebra. They do have geometry. I don't know if there's calculus yet or not. And I'm not saying that we're passing I'm not trying to say that we're passing them, but there are lots of opportunities, and there's clubs. I mean, there's lots of things that the school does that are very, very STEM heavy, where I think that maybe takes a little bit off of us. And I'm not saying that it's just, we just do English, because we're the English classroom and that's what we do. I mean, we do the nonfiction stuff, but our nonfiction stuff isn't necessarily science and math heavy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, like I said, I'm not here
I get it. No, I get it. I get it. But I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you and just tell you that it's not, because those things are covered, in the other subject areas. Where we do try to do a little bit of cross-curricular planning when things, happen as such. Mm-hmm. But in the English classroom, we're not so concerned about science and math in terms of literature. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, I have 2 more questions for you guys, and then I'll ask if there's anything else you want to add. So the second to last question goes to Brent, or do you go by Wally or Wallagory?
Wallagory's fine. Brent's fine. I'm easy.
Second to last question goes to Wally then. What is one piece of advice you have for Manuel as he moves into his own classroom next year?
I would just say you really kind of have to trust yourself. Take what other people tell you with a grain of salt. There will be complications. There will be difficulties. Things may not always go as well as you want them to, but that's not because you don't have good intentions. It's just because, as you said, and as we discussed earlier, it's a process. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like I was a good teacher until about my 7th year.
It takes.
And I mean, I'm not even saying that I am, I don't want to be boastful and say that I am, but I'm just saying, like, but I honestly don't feel like I really knew what I don't.
He's an excellent.
But I don't really feel like I knew what I was doing until about my 7th year. Mm-hmm. I think in my 3rd and my 4th year, I thought I knew what I was doing, but it still took another 2 or 3 years to get to the point where I really was just like, okay. Like, at this point, like, I know enough to know what works. I know enough to know what doesn't work, but I'm also at the point where I'm willing to try new things. And that takes a while. And just, I mean, as silly as it sounds, like I said, you have to believe that you're doing this for a reason, that you're doing this for a purpose, that and I know that your heart's in the right place. I know that. I see you 3 times a week, and I know who you are as a person, and it's great. So as long as you can keep those things, and I tell everybody, including my students, this, and I tell other people, they're just like, I don't know how you teach in New York City public schools. How do you do it? How do you do it? And I tell them, and this is what I say. I said, as long as I go home and I have more good days than bad days, then I'm okay with that. And that's really all that it boils down to, really. As long as you go home and you know that you've had more good days than bad days, because you will have bad days, and those bad days suck, and they're terrible. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you go home and you may cry. You may. You may throw things around. You may question everything that you've ever done.
Yeah.
But you can't give up on yourself, and you have to know that even if you reach one student or two students or 6 students, you've done your job. You've done your job. And that's it.
Awesome. And then the last question goes to Manuel.
A tissue maybe for Wally. Look what you see, he's big on the affective domain.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Yeah, no, me too.
And the last question for Manuel, and this might actually need tissues also. What's the most important thing you've learned so far from Wally that you plan to bring with you into your classroom next year?
Oh, no, it's very easy. I mean, the most important thing I've learned is that he cares so much for the students that he gets involved in their lives and asks them questions and talks to them. And so they end up liking him so much that behavior management is never punitive at all. So he just has to say very quietly, okay, guys, let's move on. And they're all quiet right away. Whereas I've seen some teachers, having to bring out a whip constantly, and not with Wally. Yeah, they just, they can love other teachers and walk all over them, but they don't do it with Wally. So, he strikes a good balance that is important to me because I see myself very similar to him too. I'm big on the affective domain. I'm big on trying to, and one of my fears is maybe that they will walk all over me because I'm too nice. And so that's the most important thing I'm learning from him because it's directly relevant to my personality.
And they did, and going along with what you just said, I noticed that the kids did take to him very quickly.
Yeah,
they really, really did. And even some of the kids that we consider like the tough kids, or the tough cases, whatever you want to call them, they like him, and they're really excited when he's there in the classroom. And they're like, "Where is he? Why is he not here? Is he okay? He's like, is he okay? When is he coming back?" So I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
And one of them said, like, "You're like a father to me." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
So I was like,
that's really sweet.
He's like, "You're like a father to me."
Aww.
Yeah.
So it's good.
So that's important for me too.
Yeah.
To have learned.
Very cool. Well, those are all the questions I have for you guys. Is there anything else that you want to add for me to bring back to the program?
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess, I know that some people, here at this school in particular, were not as lucky as I was. Yeah. And I know that things happen. And I'm grateful that it's been a positive experience for him more so than me, because I'm going to be okay. Like, I mean, and I hate to say that, but next year, I want him to leave here and I want him to be like, oh, wow, that was a really, really positive experience. And I learned a few things that I can take with me, or, it reinforces, his idea that this is what he wants to do, and this is what he, and again, that this is where his heart is, and this is where his head is, and that he knows that he can do this. And I mean, for me, yes, I mean, I would like it because I don't want it to be difficult for me either, other than the fact that, the additional planning and things like that, but that's fun because then once we actually start talking, then I start to notice that I come up with things that I maybe hadn't really thought about in that particular way before either. So it's really beneficial for both of us. And again, like I said, it's another set of eyes, another set of ears. But more importantly, I just want it to be good for him because I want it to set the tone for, when he's out there, not by himself, but when he's doing it for real, I want that to be a good experience as well.
Cool.
So.
Anything else for the record?
No, I don't think so.
I think no. That's
no, I don't think so. But it's just been, again, it's been a positive experience, and
Awesome.
And I know that things are only going to get better, and he's only going to get better.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty much it. And hopefully, in May when he walks across the stage, there'll be a job.
Spread my wings.
There'll be a job offer. Hopefully days later.
They're going to snatch me right
because he's going to need the summer to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really is.
Yeah.
Because they're going to expect him to come in at least with a unit prepared at the start of school. So, and that's something that takes some consideration and quite a bit of planning. And, you know, if he needs me as a resource, you know, it's not like, okay, on May 16th, you know, we sever our ties and we never speak to each other again.
no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and maybe he'd end up working here in the neighborhood because I know that he lives here in the neighborhood. So,
Exactly.
so that would be kind of nice as well. So we'll see.
And you'll have a lot of resources for that with your cohort, hopefully, and with folks at TRTC and your induction mentor. So even when you're moving into your next job, hopefully you won't feel like you have to do it all alone or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you then.
No